All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chief Meteorologist Taylor Canoose. This is Meteorologist Will Rowe. We're going to be here for a little bit to break down everything we're watching in regards to the tropics.
It's a messy situation out there, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. So, lot to track. Rising concerns for us here in South Carolina, unfortunately. So we want to keep you as informed as we possibly can. We're telling you everything we know. We're not withholding anything. So we want to keep you as informed as we are, and we'll continue to do that through this weekend and into next week, as what will soon be Imelda.
Yes. Will
likely be a problem for at least parts of South Carolina before too long. So behind me is where we stand at this moment. We got a good idea and a pretty good grip on the pattern right now at this point. We're watching this situation very closely, and I would say at this point we're at the period where there are likely going to be at least impacts in parts of South Carolina. So now is the time to prepare for the hurricane situation that is at least possible, at least a tropical storm. Impacts are not imminent just yet. We still have a few more days before we see impacts here in South Carolina, but again, it's a growing concern that we will have some problems in the state, and that may very well include us here in the Midlands as well. So we'll go ahead and break down what we have going on in the Atlantic right now.
Yeah, so we still have Humberto out there, Category 1 hurricane, 90-mile-per-hour winds right now, and there's still a possibility that this could interact with Imelda, but at this point it's not looking as likely as it once was, but that's still not off of the table completely. So here we have soon-to-be Imelda, 90% chance of developing here over the next 2 and 7 days. It will likely start to see some development here over the weekend once it starts to make its way over the Bahamas, and from there, that's where we have a little bit of a question. What is it going to do? Is it going to stall offshore? Is it going to come onshore as we head into Monday or Tuesday? So what do we think is going to happen, Taylor?
Yeah, so here's what's going to happen with Humberto. High confidence that this will not directly impact the U.S. It is forecast to strengthen a lot over the next several days. Category 4 this weekend into early Monday, so that forecast has increased as far as the intensity with that storm. It is going to take that typical recurve back out to the Atlantic away from the U.S. Could bring impacts to Bermuda, but as far as locally, that's not going to be a direct impact. As Will mentioned, though, it may impact what future Imelda does because those two systems are so close together. So here's what we're expecting through the weekend. We're highly confident this is what's going to happen. Future Imelda tracks over the Bahamas, then takes that turn northward. So here's where we will stand around Monday morning. At least a tropical storm likely at this point, possibly a hurricane here with Imelda, definitely a hurricane with Humberto, a major hurricane at that point. So there's like 500 miles separating these two storms. That is rare to have two potential hurricanes that close together. So with that in mind, we've kind of cut it down to two possible scenarios with what happens with Imelda. The first scenario is this: Imelda gets close to the South Carolina coast on Monday, stalls out, possibly even drifts east a little bit thanks to the impacts of Humberto being so close, and also there's going to be some high pressure that might be a brief buffer to Imelda. So it might stall out just off the South Carolina coast Monday into Tuesday. It could be a few days where it stalls out there, believe it or not. Some models are actually suggesting that. And then eventually it moves inland, likely weaker at that point, but still definitely some impacts with that in mind. Now, I think the more likely scenario in what many models are showing is this is just going to dive straight toward the Carolina coast early next week. Monday night in particular looks like the most likely time. This makes landfall. Very well could be right over the South Carolina coast. We're still trying to pinpoint what part of the coast it will make landfall. Will it be closer to Myrtle Beach, farther south near Charleston, or Hilton Head? Those are all still on the table here, but again, this is the more likely scenario. It does not stall out much and just kind of moves directly inland late Monday into Tuesday, and that would bring its own set of problems. So in either scenario, it's not great news for us in South Carolina. So again, that's why we're telling people now is the time to go ahead and prepare for possible impacts.
It's most important to prepare because either scenario could bring us a lot of rain. A lot of the models are starting to go way up there as a foot plus, which is not off the table just yet, but it's definitely not likely. It's a little too far out to be able to pinpoint down those rainfall estimates. But let's take a look at the wind field. Here's the European model, and I do want to note that this is not the only model that is showing this scenario. So what happens is Humberto starts to linger back a little bit before Imelda, so that's going to allow it to V-line towards the Carolina coastline, but from there, with that strengthening high pressure to the north, it's kind of going to cause it to start to take a southerly trend, along with Humberto helping it push south. But after that, here we are Thursday morning, 12 a.m. It's still off of our coastline before finally starting to push inland as we head into Friday and into next weekend, which that's a week-long impact. That's a lot of rainfall, that's a lot of wind, and also isolated tornado potential all throughout the week. So we're hoping that this scenario does not play out. It's definitely one of the outliers at this point in time, but it's just not out of the question just yet. So it's something that we have to continue to keep an eye on.
It's possible. And with that sitting just offshore for several days, that would be the worst case scenario for flooding.
Yes, it would.
For much of South Carolina. So again, hopefully that does not pan out. This is the American GFS model. Kind of takes a more traditional route straight towards South Carolina. Again, you got Humberto on the right, and here comes future Imelda on the left. Midnight Tuesday. So again, Monday night, early Tuesday, projected landfall for what will likely be Imelda. And again, kind of takes that turn into the state heading into Tuesday morning. So this scenario certainly on the table. I'd say the majority of the models are showing this scenario at this point. Again, no matter which way you slice it, it's not exactly good news for South Carolina.
And another thing to note is this is Tuesday at 12 p.m. as opposed to the other one, which was late in the week. So this has impacts out much quicker than some of the other models are suggesting. So this would be the best case scenario if it were to make landfall, because that would bring a little bit less rainfall and less impacts throughout the week.
Best case scenario for us in the Midlands is landfall is farther north. So northeast, maybe a landfall near Wilmington, North Carolina, for example. That would put what we call, the dirty side of the storm, if you will, the northeast quadrant of the storm in North Carolina, while we would see fewer impacts here in the Midlands. That would be our best case scenario. Now, that would mean worse news for North Carolina. But we still would have some impacts. But locally, if you're cheering for anything, that's kind of what we're hoping for as far as limiting the impacts here in Columbia and surrounding areas. Will, you put this list together yesterday.
I did.
You might be surprised to find there have not been as many landfalling hurricanes right over the South Carolina coast as you may think.
Yeah, so this is from the State Climate Office. They put this together, and there's only been 10 landfalling hurricanes in South Carolina since 1952. So almost 70 years and only 10 landfalling hurricanes. Most recent is Hurricane Ian, late September of 2022, so almost 3 years ago. Then we had Matthew, which brought some damage to our coastline and also some flooding here locally. And then we also got Gaston, Charlie, Hugo, which we just talked about. The anniversary was just last week. And then another notable one was Hazel. Hazel is kind of iffy. It kind of crossed over the very border of South Carolina and North Carolina, but still it was pretty close enough, and we do consider it a landfall in South Carolina. So those are the most recent 10. We did have some tropical storms that have made landfall, most recently Chantal earlier this year, but these are the most recent hurricanes that have made landfall.
And of course, we've had landfalling hurricanes that were not direct landfalls over the South Carolina coast that still caused major problems in South Carolina. Of course, Helene being a perfect example of that almost exactly 1 year ago today. But as far as the center of the eye passing over the South Carolina shore, this is the short list.
So if Imelda were to make landfall here next week, it would be the first one in 3 years that has made landfall in South Carolina.
And it hasn't been since Hugo that we've had a major hurricane make landfall over the South Carolina coast. All right, so what can we expect here in the Midlands as far as the threats? There's usually 4 different threats with tropical systems: storm surge, flooding / heavy rain. the winds, of course, and tornadoes. Those are kind of the four things we watch out for. Storm surge, with us being inland, is not an issue locally. So the main three we watch out for in the Midlands: flooding, wind, and tornadoes. Our main concern with this storm is flooding rain. I know a lot of you are happy to get rain today and possibly tomorrow, since we've been so dry recently. Even though we've been so dry, the potential rain we could get from this storm may be too much to handle in too short a period of time, even though we've had developing drought recently, so it's almost too much of a good thing.
And speaking of drought, since we're already so dry, it's not going to have enough time to seep into the ground, so that's another problem that we are facing, so that just increases that risk of seeing that flash flooding.
Yeah, that's right. So as far as how much rain are we going to get, it's hard to say for sure. At this point, I'll pop up the outlook from the Weather Prediction Center. This is kind of a general outlook. Generally speaking, farther east you go in South Carolina, the heavier the rain forecast is. Areas highlighted in orange here, generally around 5 to 7 inches of rain. That's kind of a broad forecast right now for the Midlands. Maybe around 4 to 6 to the east, closer to 2 to 4 to the west. Again, that's a broad outlook. It all depends on the exact track of this storm. A farther south landfall would lead to heavier rain for us in the Midlands. A farther north landfall would mean less rain and fewer flooding impacts. So again, it all depends on that exact precise track, and we don't know exactly where that's going to be just yet.
It's just too early to tell, and that's something that we're going to continue to keep our eyes on throughout the weekend. And also, if you have any questions, go ahead and drop your comments down. I'm monitoring the comments, so we will be sure to get to any of your questions, and I will also be doing Facebook Lives throughout this weekend as the storm continues to progress.
Yep, that's right. So as far as the odds of impacts in South Carolina, this is kind of a general map, nothing too fancy. Low threat of tropical impacts in yellow, a medium threat in orange, a high threat in red. We think it's most likely that there will be impacts along the coast between Charleston and Myrtle Beach. High chance of at least some impacts there with this future storm. Again, just how bad it is depends on the exact track. With that heavy rain threat in mind, I think the area highlighted in orange has the best chance at some potentially significant rain. So we've got that area highlighted in medium. That does include Columbia and much of the Midlands. And then farther in the outreach, it's possible those areas experience heavy rainfall and possibly some strong winds as well. But it looks like this is kind of our bullseye at this point.
Yeah, and this is also assuming that this storm makes landfall somewhere right here, best case scenario for us in the Midlands. But if this were to shift south towards Charleston, this would all start to shift southerly. So that's also something that we have to keep in mind.
Yep, exactly. So let's talk about the quadrants of a hurricane, because every side of the hurricane brings different impacts. So we refer to it as the right front, the left front, the right rear, and the left rear quadrants. So we cut this, let's say the eye of the storm's right here. We split it into 4 different quadrants. Let's say the storm makes landfall kind of moving to the northwest here. So we've kind of switched that map around to show where the different impacts could be. The right front is typically, and likely in this case again, is where the worst of the impacts will be. You have the wind blowing onshore. So the worst of the winds located there. The best wind shear for tornadoes is in that right front quadrant as well. The strongest storm surge in the right front quadrant. Again, those winds blowing onshore, pushing the ocean water inland. And potentially the heaviest rain will be in this area as well. Although I will say with this storm, the left front will have its fair share of heavy rain as well. So that could be an area to watch for some problems as well. The left rear and right rear, not as strong of impacts. Certainly the left rear is typically where you get the fewest impacts. Something to mention about this storm, Will, is there's some dry air that's going to be on the left rear side of this. That might allow a situation where we get some strong winds to kind of mix down to the ground. So the wind might be a little stronger than normal on the backside here. But again, typically speaking, the right front is kind of the quadrant of worst case scenario.
Yeah, so also some of these scenarios are also suggesting that this could have a hard westerly turn. So that would shift this about 90 degrees that way, and that would put the right front quadrant where the left quadrant is. So that's also something that we have to keep in mind. So it all depends on which way the storm is moving as to which quadrant is which. So like you said, this one is a northeasterly moving system. So we just have to keep in mind of that track.
Yep, exactly. So bottom line, everyone in South Carolina needs to be prepared for impacts at this point. It'll be, as usual, worst along the coast and maybe not as bad the farther inland you go. This is our in-house model. It's called the IBM graph. It goes out about 72 hours from now. We're going to get a new update on this any moment, but it goes out, at least at this point, to 8 a.m. on Monday. So I want to show you what it's showing for future Imelda. Not looking too impressive right now, but once we get to Saturday, start to get that circulation over the Bahamas, starts to at least resemble a tropical system at that point and get its act together. We may have tropical storm advisories or warnings issued for the Bahamas over the weekend due to what could develop there. As far as Florida is concerned, not expecting major impacts. Certainly could be windy with some passing rain along the Atlantic coast of Florida on Sunday. But that's the center of future Imelda right there. It's well offshore. It's going to stay well offshore more likely than not. So our model has it right around here at 8 a.m. on Monday. There's Humberto off to the east. Some models have this a little bit farther east than what this is showing here, but that's just kind of the rough location of it. By Tuesday or Monday evening, it's going to be close to here. So really we're kind of
And
like,
before you play this frame, I just want to mention this. This is what we're talking about. These two storms could interact with each other. You see the bands already coming together. So the ones from future Imelda and also Humberto kind of wrapping around each other. So that's what we're talking about. These could circulate around each other and have an influence on each other, at least a little bit. It's not going to fully rotate around each other, but it definitely could hinder Imelda, hinder Humberto, or something like that. So.
yeah, if Humberto wasn't there, this would have no problem just kind of flowing toward the east coast. There would be no reason for it not to do that, really. So the closer Humberto is to Imelda, the more likely it is it at least impacts its path at some point. Again, this is as far out as our in-house model goes. We'll get an update here to show you on the 5 o'clock show on Watch Fox News at 5. Any comments or
We
concerns?
do have one question. It's when do we get a better idea of the path?
Well, day by day it's going to get a little more accurate. We'll probably get a forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center over the weekend. I don't know if it'll be Saturday or Sunday. We're expecting this to become a tropical depression over the weekend, maybe even a tropical storm. Once it gets that delineation, we'll start to get the cone from the Hurricane Center, and they'll provide their thoughts on its path.
Yeah, but first things first, it has to move off of Hispaniola. It's currently sitting right over Hispaniola, so it's not really getting its act together just yet because it's not over those open waters. So that has to come first before we get that cone and that circulation, because they're not going to put that cone out unless we're 2 days out or it has that closed circulation.
Yep. So, hopefully we'll have a good idea by, certainly by Sunday.
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
hope we would know if it's going to stall out or not at that point. I know that's not a lot of time since a landfall on Monday night is possible, but this is a very unique situation given the two storms are close to each other. So a little less confidence in the track than we would typically have, unfortunately. So.
But yeah, that's all we have in terms of comments. If you have anything else, go ahead and drop them in real quick, or we will go back on there and answer those questions for you once we hop off of here.
Absolutely. So we'll have more coming up today on Watch Fox News at 5. You can watch that, of course, on television as well as on WACH.com. We'll keep you updated throughout this entire weekend into next week with updates on what will soon be Imelda, the eye storm, and could be a memorable one for us in South Carolina. We'll have to wait and see, but want to make sure you're all informed about the possible impacts over the next several days. All right, so again, that's Will Rowe. I'm Taylor Canoes. Thanks for watching, and stay safe as we head into the weekend. Go ahead and cut your mic.